They understand that in this democracy, the commander-in-chief does not use the men and women of our military who are willing to risk everything to protect our nation as political props to deploy against peaceful protesters on our own soil.
This is the Portland Police Bureau. This gathering has been declared a riot.
There's some of your peaceful protesters, President Obama's voice and peaceful protesters following up. I mean, to me, the evil cloak of darkness that's falling here is the Antifa movement that's still, running wild in the streets of Portland, Oregon. We have Drew Hernandez on, who's done just an amazing job as on his podcast and what he's breaking. I think is the top stuff out there. We have an embed, but the embed, we've stood the embed down for a day or two. But we've got Drew on now joining us. Drew, give us the latest. How many arrests were last night? And do you agree with President Obama's statement that troops should not be deployed? Are these peaceful protesters the way you see it since you've been out there really since the beginning on this thing?
Yeah, good morning, Steve. Hope you're doing well, brother. So Obama is a total fraud. He's a liar. I'm sorry. I have to come out and just say that up front. His statements are purely political. They're purely designed and engineered for the lemmings that don't really search or research facts for themselves. There were a few arrests made last night yet again, but what's going on with the Portland DA and some of the law enforcement officials, which even leads up to Ted Wheeler, only gives these kids a slap on the wrist. And they're out on the streets pretty much the next morning, sometimes in some cases in just a couple hours. So what's taking place in Portland is absolutely a travesty. And I think it's interesting that the DNC doesn't mention it only if they're using it as a political pawn or talking point against Donald Trump. It's pretty ridiculous to hear the former president of the United States come out and say that the current president of the United States is taking advantage of women and men in uniform as for political purposes and calling these so-called peaceful protesters peaceful. No, these peaceful protesters are rioters, they're arsonists, they attempt murder because they try to light buildings on fire that are occupied with federal officers, with local officers, which are men and women, and by the way, in a lot of cases, are men and women of color. So it's interesting because these people are extremely violent. President Obama should be ashamed of himself because he's making statements that are completely not true.
What I want to go back to Portland. You've been in the middle of this maelstrom. And explain to people, I don't think the mainstream media plays enough of this footage, right? And particularly CNN and MSNBC, they never really get back. They want to avoid the conversation here. And as we're talking about now, the evil cloak of darkness, according to Biden, of what President Trump and his followers are, you've got to start talking about the policies. You got to start talking about the granularity. And the Obama kind of concept of this, and I guess people like that at the Justice Department and DHS and others are really in a stand-down mode where these federal officers are just taking incoming nonstop. But there's no real effort to kind of put this stuff down. Is that a good way to describe it? Is that a fair way to describe it, Drew?
Absolutely, 100%. If I could speak on behalf of some of the families that are a part of the DHS or some of the families that are a part of the local police, some of them reach out to me with horror stories. Some of them are actually doxxed by the local government. They put out their personal information, and sometimes these Antifa thugs will show up to their houses, literally on their doorstep, threatening them, threatening their kids. And it's a pretty dangerous situation because the police do have their hands tied. They have the ability, Steve, to shut this down like that. But the local government isn't allowing them, like you said, due to ridiculous, limp-wristed policies. These politicians are afraid to uphold the rule of law, and this is what we're starting to see. It should not have gone on more than 80 days, Steve. 80 days. That's an embarrassment to American local law enforcement, but it's not our police fault. It's the leaders that are tying their hands. It's their fault, and that's who we need to hold accountable and call out right now in mainstream media and everywhere right now.
I see so much of your reporting that gets, I guess, I don't want to say lifted by others, but as an homage by others that makes it a thing. So your reporting is unbelievable. You just said something there. I want to make sure we're very clear. You said local governments are doxing either federal officials, their families, or local police. You mean that Antifa's doxing local officials, not local governments doxing?
Well, I've had some families reach out to me. Obviously, can't give their names, but they have expressed to me that that has happened in their own personal lives, where it has seemed to be tied up to local government because they're
Wow.
the only ones that have that personal information. Antifa doesn't have that personal information, but they somehow get it, and the only ones that have personal information to a lot of officers' personal lives would be the local higher ups that they are held accountable to. So, and they also, Antifa does, I have it on record, Steve. I could send you guys clips. I literally have Antifa on record, on film, in real time, doxing even residences. It's very sad. The way they do it is they have fake press, Steve. They masquerade as if they're press. And what they do is when they find a target, they find their address, they start to announce it, they start to pass it around to everyone, and then they specifically take the address and the personal information that they gather off the internet or wherever they get it, and they give it to their so-called press. And you could use your imagination, Steve, what they do with that. They take to the internet, they take to all their sources. That's how these people dox. That video that you're seeing right now played is 100% in real time. They had no idea I was filming it, but I'm glad I caught it because I want the world to see that these people are organized and they masquerade as if they're Americans or press.
So, Drew, last few days we started this week, and even last week we had footage and reports of the courthouse in Portland. The protesters were attempting to break in, trying to light it on fire, setting off all sorts of stuff, setting off all sorts of fireworks and stuff going off. And then recently, in the last few days, they moved on to another government building, the ICE offices and other administrative offices in Portland. That's also government owned. So right now, we're seeing that these protesters are moving from government building to government building, trying to take it down. I mean, is there any end in sight to this? When is enough enough?
I mean, I think you'd have to ask Ted Wheeler that. I think you'd have to ask Governor Brown that because they're the ones that keep pandering to these anarchists. They're the ones that keep allowing this. Local officials have the ability to work with federal government to put an end to this. This is what Donald Trump wants to do. But because of the ridiculous media comes out and you have people like President Barack Obama smearing it, it's pretty hard to get things done. I mean, really think about this. If this were taking place in the 90s or any other era before hardcore political correctness, these people would be condemned, not because of race, not because of color, not because of even political affiliation. They would be condemned because of violence. And it's interesting that right now in 2020, political correctness has gotten so bad that people are afraid just to call someone out for their ridiculous, violent, criminal behavior because they're afraid of being called a racist because they might be a person of color. That's ridiculous. I think a lot of cultural Marxism has invaded our culture and has brought us to this point where you could be called a racist and a white nationalist and a white supremacist if you dare to call out a person
But the reality
activity.
is, though, the vast majority, and I'm just going off of your footage and other people's footage, the vast majority of these are Caucasians. These are young white males, right? That are the big bulk of at least what your footage shows. Am I not correct there?
Yeah, it really is a mixture of both, and I'm glad you bring that up because Antifa, which is predominantly a lot of Caucasian, young kids, girls, boys, teenagers, and even 20s, some in their 30s, they use BLM as a cover. So they'll masquerade in a Black Lives Matter gathering or rally, and then they'll infiltrate and commit their anarchy within it and claim that it's a Black Lives Matter march or whatever it may be as a cover, because if you try to condemn their actions, then you're a racist because you're condemning a person of color's rally or demonstration. These people are smart, Steve. They're not just a bunch of stupid street thugs. They're very organized, strategic. They are funded, and they are well trained because they actually maneuver on the streets very, very, very well. I'm actually kind of impressed sometimes the way that they maneuver against the police, and that indicates to me, Steve, that number one, if these individuals have the ability to maneuver in very strategic ways, that indicates to me that they have been trained. By who? I think that's who we need to find out.
Drew, it's Jack. I just want to ask you a question because this really highlights your point that they use BLM as cover, but occasionally people who self-identify as BLM are also quite violent. Wasn't the fellow who kicked the man in the head a few days ago self-identified with BLM?
Oh yeah, Marquise Love, not just him. There were multiple individuals that were attending and that were a part, were chanting Black Lives Matter just hours before that violent attack took place. And not only that, just to give you guys some nuance, there's actually a Black Lives Matter little open, barbecue area right there next to the Justice Center. A lot of the individuals that you see in the footage that were physically assaulting, looting, and robbing people last weekend were actually chilling and hanging out at that Black Lives Matter little barbecue section. There's a gigantic flag in front of it, and it says very clearly Black Lives Matter. And a lot of the people that were phically assaulting people were just got up from that little barbecue section.
You mentioned last
doing
night
what they're doing.
We always like to play the audio, but last night when they start going through the residences, Jack brought this point up. It looks like they purposely. Jack, why don't you jump in here? Because the residents, we couldn't play the audio. We love the audio because I think it adds a shock value to it. What happened last night?
Well, it is interesting. Steve and I were talking about this. The reason maybe the media doesn't play this, these guys drop the F-bomb every other word.
Or worse.
Or worse. So they're out last night in Portland in the middle of the night trying to wake up residents saying, get the F up, we're here to take back your neighborhood, et cetera, FFF. And I wonder if they're doing that on purpose, we were wondering, in order to keep the footage from being on the TV.
Drew, observations?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
One last thing, because we've got to bump
that's definitely a possibility for sure.
Okay, so tell us what you would recommend that would be done. Recommend what would be done here. You've got very strong opinions since you've been in the middle of this. Tell us what you would recommend be done so that Portland can return back to a safe and secure thing where people could have peaceful protests if they so wanted. What has to happen?
I think local government officials, council, women, men, people in power that are in local government, I think there do need to be investigations because I think it's very clear. I don't see.
You mean investigations of the
more
local
than 80 days?
Investigations of the local government officials.
Absolutely.
Well, who's
Absolutely,
supposed
Steve.
to do? Who's
Who's
supposed to do that? Where do you want to see the center of action? Is that supposed to be the governor? Should it be the mayor? That seems what's taking it over. Is the head of the National Guard of Oregon? Is it back at the federal level? Is it DOJ? Is it DHS? Where do you see the action coming from?
I would definitely see possibly the DOJ because there are a lot of federal crimes being committed against federal buildings and federal offices and even federal officers themselves. I think investigations do need to take place because I just don't see how this continues to allowed to be happened in an American city. To me, it's an embarrassment. It's a travesty. But I definitely think that investigations need to take place because it's gone on for too long. And a lot of Portland residents and even police officer families and DHS families are fed up because they are suffering from a lot of abuse. These men and women that go out on the streets every night, they're forced. Their hands are tied. They're not allowed to use the force that they've been trained to use against violent criminals and rioters because the local officials don't allow them to use it. So they have to go out there every single night and suffer from all of this psychological and physical abuse every single night. And I can only imagine what that must be like, you guys. It must be traumatic for them to go through this.
Okay, give access. What's your podcast? How do people get access to your reporting? Because it's been amazing.
Thank you, Steve. You guys can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/Lives Matter, facebook.com/Lives Matter, Instagram Lives Matter Official, and Twitter Lives Matter Show.
We got to bounce. Drew Hernandez. We'll put it all up. Amazing. Back in a moment. We got 3 minutes.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
This is episode 346 now with over 13 million downloads. Plus, we're ubiquitous everywhere. Next segment, we're going to have Miles Grow, GTV, G News, all of those operations, plus the new federal state. Great support yesterday online. They're just amazing. But I want to go back to Customs and Border. Drew's talking about the abuse they're getting up there on these riot conditions, right? Every night, and they can't respond to anything. But let's go back to the wall. Let's go back to the border. Tell me how, and we were very early on, I think it was Nicaragua said they're going to close their borders to the United States. At the initial stage where people pointing the finger, hey, does the U.S. have their hands around this thing? Are they taking it seriously enough? I think even Mexico said they were prepared to close the border if they had to. We were 100%, hey, Nicaragua, Mexico, you guys have your own national interests at heart. If you need to close these borders, you need to close the U.S. traffic, close the U.S. traffic. We have no problem with that. It's your call. That's what nationalism is about. Obviously working together, but you got to make your own calls for what's right for your country. But the situation in Arizona and Texas, things where we had this explosion of the virus. And we kept saying early on, when people were saying, this thing's going to go away in the summer, my point was, hey, is this really, have we proven yet that it's impervious to, that heat and humidity kill it? It's proven it's impervious to heat and humidity. Right, you've had the hottest summer, down in Death Valley and around California. I think in the history of the country, it was 130 degrees the other day. Yet in this very hot summer, you've had this thing explode in places like Arizona, in places like Texas. Take us to the border. Talk about COVID, but I want to start with the Customs and Border Patrol. Brandon Judd was on here the other day. These people are heroes. They are there to protect you every day. It is to protect the borders of this country. They are the unsung heroes in this whole thing. Talk to us about the COVID virus and the Border Patrol.
Well, Customs and Border Patrol today have had over 1,900 agents get sickened by COVID-19. And we've talked a lot about the border and the potential absence of controls on the Mexican border potentially being a pathway for people carrying COVID-19. Now, it's kind of hard to define that these people are necessarily coming across the border with this. We've seen some rises in hospitalizations, things like that. But when you look at the Border Patrol agents who've actually been sickened, of the 1,900 that were sickened, 1,500 of them came from Arizona, California, Texas, Florida. These states along the border, I mean, by example, along the Canadian border, there have been about 15 or 20 people, but along the Mexican border,
is that because the weight?
1,500.
Is that because you have many more agents on the southern border? I mean, you got to take that into consideration, right?
You could take that into consideration, and I wouldn't say that this is a solid black and white rationale that it's all coming across the border. Certainly, the border at the southern border is much more active. We have more agents there.
How many agents have died?
We've had 10 agents around the country die out of 1,907 that have been infected. The only state that was not on the border that seemed to have a fairly significant number of Border Patrol agents who were sickened was New York. And I'm sure this has a lot to do with the travel in and out of LaGuardia and JFK airports during the period of time while Governor Cuomo was saying we can't stop flights into New York.
So how bad now? Right now, Arizona and Texas states are starting to drop back, and I know you've got this analysis on Zero Hedge that goes into a Templeton study that says, I believe by election day, their analysis is we will have no new infections by election day. Is that, I don't want to misstate this, but the surge the surge of wave one of what I call it that came during the summer was driven by southern states like Florida, Texas, Arizona. A lot of this on the border, correct?
Yes, and also one of the things is the vast number of young people who are becoming infected now was not the case back 3 months ago, right? We're starting to see, I think it's about 40% of the people who are testing positive in most of these states that are seeing troubles are people who are under the age of 40. So we're seeing much more mild cases amongst them, and overall, across the country, hospitalizations are declining. Now, in the Zero Hedge discussion, and this has been something that people have talked about for some time.
But this is off of is this the Templeton study?
No, the Templeton study was very interesting. Templeton, as an investment advisor, went out, hired Gallup to go out and test the perceptions versus reality in terms of COVID-19 amongst the American people. And what was incredible, they went and they looked at the distribution of deaths in terms of where they actually occur, and then they asked the average American what they thought were the risks in each one of the categories. For example, under 24 years of age, the average American thinks there's an 8 to 10% chance that you could die of this, when the reality is it's 0.2.
8 to 10% chance you could die?
Right.
A little
So,
high.
and this is true all the way across the board. When the reality is the illness really affects people who are quite elderly. The majority of people who are young probably have some underlying conditions
or comorbidities.
and bad luck. Put it this way: H1N1, the disease that came from Mexico that was controlled by the Biden-Obama disease response team. Okay, it killed a vastly larger number of children than COVID-19 has. I would say probably 5 times as many. We never discussed closing schools. We never discussed their failure to control it. And let's also remember, they failed to get that vaccine. And H1N1's a lot easier to create a vaccine than the coronavirus. They failed to get that vaccine in a
that was the
timely
one. That was
fashion
the
for
swine
American
flu
people.
that came up from
Yeah,
Mexico.
and there's been some
Right.
recent analysis that if
Yeah.
that swine flu had been as dangerous as this COVID-19, by the time halfway through the year, 60 million Americans were potentially affected by it. If it had been as dangerous as this one, they estimate 1 to 2 million Americans would have died. So when we talk about who responds better, I think clearly the Trump campaign responded very well on a comparative basis to how the Biden-Obama team did with H1N1 out of Mexico. And further, this happened in 2009, so they were in office for quite a few years after that. Here's a big question for our audience. What did they do to improve the supply of N95 masks? What did they do to ensure that we weren't going to be reliant on China for all of these PPEs? Because the same crisis occurred in 2009. We can talk. Remember, we talked to Mike Bowen. They've made him put up 5 more lines to try and catch up with him, almost bankrupt him. He had to fire 150 employees. Guess what? Once the thing was over, Obama and Biden went right back to sleep.
Walked away.
And when we look at this disease as it's flowing through here, I mean, we just had Anthony Fauci just last night was interviewed by the Washington Post. They said, what are you going to do about voting? He said, I'm going to vote in person. He said, so long as they run it like Starbucks and the grocery store, I'm good with that.
So here's one of the things that I think I want to get into tomorrow. Throughout the world, we know people have come up a steep learning curve. The scientific community, the managerial community, workers, people, they now know about mass social distancing, all that. People have come up about targeted interventions, who's the most at risk, the elderly, particularly in nursing homes, comorbidities, minority communities, all that. How does Joe Biden get away with, hey, I put out my my national strategy on the 12th of March, and that would be my plan. Hey, Sleepy Joe, you're sleepy and lazy. That the plan has to be up to date. It can't be back to the March plan. March plan was just your generalized happy talk. You need testing and everything like that. You need granularity, Joe. You're going to be a leader, and Trump is so evil and incompetent and everything like that. You're cribbing off of that's like taking last year's homework, right, and bringing it up. We've gone up such a steep learning curve, right? Even people who don't agree with President Trump about what to do. That's number one. So tomorrow I want to get into his thing about his, and then I do want to talk about this zero hedge study. But Jack, go ahead.
Well, I mean, you talk about how things evolve and you've got to adapt. Even Anthony Fauci, the man who seems to be able to respond without data, even he said yesterday, as the situation evolves, so too will the evidence, so too will the data, and you need to be humble enough and flexible enough to change things based on what the latest data and evidence is. One thing we can say for sure, Steve, the data and evidence and our understanding of this disease between August 21st and March 15th is 100% different. We have a totally different understanding of how this disease works. Even Fauci said, and I found this very surprising, because they said, hey, should we worry about doom and gloom? Yesterday he said, we're going to come out the other side of this. He said, I'm confident about voting in November. He says that we have to understand this. He said all schools should be able to open up unless they're in the red zones, in which case they might have to take some extra precautions. The world is beginning to understand that this is a virus that modern science can control, therapeutics can control, and ultimately the vaccine may help us control. But back to the idea, though, from Zero Hedge, talking about this idea that this disease may disappear.
By the 3rd of November, not disappear, but there may be zero hospitalizations by November, by Election Day, correct? That's what they said.
Well, that's what they're saying, and the trend is certainly going in that direction, Steve. We look at a country like Sweden. They are almost down to nil hospitalizations day in and day out. And I think there's becoming a larger understanding, even within the scientific community, that there is an inevitability about the infectiousness of this disease. And when we go into these full-on lockdowns, and we've seen this little explosion since the BLM marches and everything in June, we saw an increase in cases completely came from the fact that people were out in the streets. It's one of the reasons we see such an explosion in young people. I know the mainstream media wants to deny this, but all the graphs prove it. So in effect, and we said this earlier, when we talk about this slope of infection, underneath that slope are going to be the same number of infected people, whether we stretch this out over 3 years or blow it out in 2 months. So I think that there has a growing sense that we need to confront this and use therapeutics, use the evidence that we have of who is at risk, circle up the old age homes, and get the kids back to school.
There's going to be a statue to Jack Maxey in the Stortorget, the central square in Stockholm, one day.
He's the
Finally go back to my people.
Swede to Swede. My Fauci today saying, he's much calmer. He's much saying, he said you just got to check if the data changes. I think the question is not about the data and evidence changing. It's that what decisions did you make when you saw data and evidence last time in the direction that it took us? Okay, we'll return in a moment. Miles Grove talking about our medical supplies in the flooded Yangtze Valley.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room. We got every platform in the world that we're ubiquitous on, plus our podcast. Make sure you go everywhere to get War Room. Now with over 13 million downloads on podcasts, and we're everywhere on America's Voice, Dish Channel 219, Newsmax TV, on the John Fredericks Radio Network, on Facebook, on YouTube, Pluto TV. We're absolutely ubiquitous, and also in Mandarin on GTV and G News, and really the massive track we're getting for that is important. And here's why. Whether it's on the border of the United States fighting for the angel moms, and the angel moms are the moms that have had children that have been either killed or murdered or something horrific done to them by illegal aliens that have been here and captured a number of times, and all these horror stories, whether it's being a voice for the angel moms on the border or being a voice for Lao Beijing, right, in the Yangtze Valley. That's what the show. That's what the show is, a global show. And people are freaked out. Why is the political nature of the hits on us, particularly by the places like the guys who brought the charges yesterday? Because they don't like the fact that we're uniting the deplorables with Lao Beijing, old 100 names, which are the deplorables of China. That is the way that you want to have change. You want to have global change. You want to have an economy and a society that works for people. Unite the working class and middle class people of the United States with the working class and middle class of China that is under the dictatorship of the Chinese Communist Party, and you'll have that. One way not to do that, and we're not here to tell you how to vote. We're here to highlight. But over the last 4 days, and the Democrats had 4 days to lay it all out, China, as we've seen, is mentioned twice, once by Cuomo in a false analogy about President Trump focusing on China and not worried about the European virus, right, which is just complete hokum, right? And then Joe Biden last night slipping in a line about China and the medical supplies. Raheem, before we bring Miles Guo in from the whistleblower movement, New Federal State, everything he does, I want to go back to the national plan, and he did not mention China when he first laid this out, correct?
Right. I always go back and, check the tapes, basically. If somebody says that they are doing something, let's hold them to it. So I went back in the break and looked at Joe Biden's March plan. And you're right, firstly, in saying the plan's already out of date, and I'll get to that in a second. But also, he talked last night, and I said earlier on in the show, I said, hey, they just slipped that China thing in there for our benefit. So it says last night, we'll make the medical supplies and protective equipment our country needs, and we'll make them here in America, so we will never be at the mercy of China and other foreign countries. In the March plan, there's no mention of it. What he says in the March plan is take steps in the aftermath of the crisis to produce American-sourced and manufactured medical supply products in order to reduce our dependence on foreign sources.
Okay, before we go into other things, let's get Miles in here, because I want to bring in this specific Jack Maxey. Miles, since you've inspired him, has been all of this. But Miles, I want to go to you. This whole concept of this flood And we said for the American audience that listens, it's going to have a direct impact on your life. The first direct impact is about medical supplies, PPE, pharmaceuticals. The second is about the supply chain for manufacturing. You were the first person, once again, when everybody says Miles grows so far off base, so crazy, you were the first person to warn the world about this flood. You were the first person to warn the world about the Three Gorges Dam and the problems there. Can you update us on exactly what's going on in China? Because I don't think we're totally getting a clear picture. What's going on in China right now about this flood?
Hi, sir. Steve Kim Bannon right here. I'm very happy to see you again. I joined the war room. That's a good question, sir. Last 48 hours for China is very important about this Three Gorges Dam as the flooded. It's the big disaster. The CCP devil, they are deliberately understood. This is the understood. It's the huge, at least yes. Deliberately at least is to kill thousands of people. But you look, China media, nobody talk about the truth. Also, Western media, nobody cares this. Also, nobody want to talk this. Every media is follows America inside the struggle. This is the fight. That's the CCP. Always the solution. Move your eye. Don't follow. Don't watch what's happening in China. How many people get died? And the Three Gorges Dam, they are deliberately at least. That's disaster. Another side is this is here is nobody have the good food can eat. Also, is they close all the media. Also, they take down its signal. Nobody can use the iPhone, mobile phone, send to any tools to outside. That's a disaster. Another side, I want you know, sir. In the world, America, in more than 20 million people get the virus as the infect. And now it's a million people every day getting infected more. But the CCP is still in the China. It's the folate. They kill people. And everywhere, they are do BGY. They are control the media. They influence the America election. That's the CCP, the devil in everywhere, and use American blood. So now you look at America, sir. The American media, many people talk about China the truth. Many people talk about CCP, what has happened in the Western world, use the coronavirus to kill the people. Yesterday I have the inside intelligence. So CCP have a new strategy. One is make more the coronavirus. Make Western side, more people get infected, more people get die. Also, cover you the truth, move your eye. Okay, as the watch America inside political struggle. That's a disaster. Also, you look at how many people died in the last 48 hours. Nobody talk. Only war room. Steve Kim Bannon and the team talk about this. So Chinese, new federal state, really appreciate the war room, everybody. Really appreciate Stephen Kim Bannon. Thank you, sir.
So, Miles, I want to go back to something you said about the reality of what's happening in this river valley, what's happening with this flood. You're saying the CCP purposely is trying to take people's eye off it by talking about and leaking about this struggle at the highest levels between Xi and other people, where the reality is this flood is out of control. The food production is not a bumper harvest. They're lying about that. That you're seeing real deaths in China, and nobody's really doing anything about it. Is that your point? That right now the CCP is letting down the Chinese people about this flood, and they're lying to the world, and they're lying to the world media about the reality of it?
Yes, sir. I have a lot of phone call last 40 hours. I have the Chongqing and Chengdu as my, I have the investment company there. A lot of my staff from the Chongqing and the Chengdu and the Three Gorges staff. All the family there. We find a solution. Try to contact all the people, ask what has happened. All the people cry. You see, the neighborhood die. The family people to die. Some people is no food, no clean water, no hospital, no health care. All the China no health care system. That's ridiculous because CCP never create a health care for all the Chinese. This China law Beijing is very, very poor. But American media, nobody connect to, the last 48 hours. What is happening real Chongqing, 3 golden stand, what followed, how many people is get die. Another side, very important, sir. There, Sichuan and Chongqing, I have the company there. They get a lot of people threatened. You cannot talk anything. You cannot send any voice give outside. You just keep in your home. Somebody call police. Why is it from the water? Because last 1 week, no raining in the Chongqing, in Chengdu. Where from the water? Is it say you cannot ask where from the water? Just shut up, silent, close your mouth. That's why it's deliberately honest. No raining. Where from the water? From 3 golden stand. They open the gate in the night. They send it to Chongqing and Chengdu. They worry it's 3 golden stands broken. Then they are on the night. Is the deliberately honest the water that kill people, thousands of people. That's ridiculous. So this is why, sir, American need to know Communist Party never care how many people to die. Never think about the human rights. They don't care. That's why CCP virus, coronavirus, every second kill the world, it's the law Beijing. Also, that's why World Room, Stephen Bannon, you are so important. You is my hero. You is the risk of the world, the save the world. I really, really admire you. Thank you.
Miles, we got a couple minutes left. I want to go back and thank you for the compliments, but you don't need to give them to us. We're here for the fight. The whole team is, and everybody that backs us up. Real quickly, what do you think's going to happen? You're the one that called this over a month ago, 6 weeks ago. He said, hey, focus in August on Three Gorges Dam and the flooding that's going to happen. It's going to be massive. It could actually take it down. What do you think? We got 2 minutes. What do you think is going to happen in the next couple of days? And is the Chinese Communist Party going to step in here and try to get anything done, or are they just going to let this go?
Have more than 50%, maybe 3 quarters that's broken. It can kill the million, maybe 10 million people. Also, it's no doubt this year in China, it's nobody have good food. It's no agriculture and no good food, and this is big trouble. Another trouble, China economy is coming down. There's no doubt. They all the lie. The only one hope is Trump president lose the election, American hope to China again. Even this hope not happen, is CCP is die. I hope America don't give chance to CCP survive again. That's American world trouble. Sir, really appreciate you, good job. Stand to truth, give the rest of the world. You as a Chinese hero, you always Chinese hero. I am really appreciate. Many people want me, Miles, could you talk to Stephen Bannon, Rahid, Jackie, Reese, everybody, really appreciate them talk to about China, what has happened, the truth. Thank you, sir.
Miles, if you could just hang on, we're going to take a break and bring you back. But I want to go back to something. The reason this is so important is that Rosemary Gibson's been warning about this for decades, and Joe Biden and these guys didn't do anything on their watch, right? This just didn't happen overnight. The medical supplies, the PPE, and particularly the pharmaceuticals all moved into this area of China. It's always been dangerous, right, because of this flooding. Miles and others, Miles warned about this, months ago, 6 weeks ago, that, hey, this is going to be a problem. It's going to peak in August, and somebody better get on top of this. Nobody's calling out the Chinese Communist Party. What are you doing? What are you doing from a humanitarian basis? What are you doing for your people? And since so much of the world's production, manufacturing, and particularly medical is there, this is a global problem. Why are they not being called up in front of the United Nations? Why is there not a UN Security Council meeting immediately to call the CCP and say, what are you doing? Raheem, jump in here before you get a break.
Maybe we'd be able to ask Joe Biden about all of this if he would take any media questions. The guy's running for president, he just accepted the nomination. No media questions. There's no press. And here's the thing. You can put these two things, his March statement and his quote last night, you can put them side by side and realize they do not match up. He's talking about taking steps in the aftermath of the crisis first time around. Now he's saying, I would have done it totally differently. No, you didn't. You said you would have done it the exact same way.
Well, they're telegraphing that the crisis would be over after he's elected. Right?
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna go to a break. We're gonna bring Miles Guo back. We have other questions about these reports that are coming out about the Wuhan lab, something else he's been on from the very beginning. We're gonna take a short commercial break and return with Miles Guo talking about Wuhan and the CCP virus that's infecting the world. Make sure you get counted at #WarRoomPandemic. We're going to hear all your comments, all your observations, and on the live stream. Be back in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. We've got Miles Guo on, the number one antagonist, I guess, to the Chinese Communist Party on a global basis. We're going to talk about Wuhan in a second, but Jack, you had some other observations and questions for Miles about the information we are getting in the West about this flood.
Well, we've talked about this on the show many times. I've asked listeners to go out, do a Google search on Three Gorges Dam, do a Google search on China flood, and there's almost an entire blackout globally on any specific detail. You really have to dig into the numbers. And I wanted to ask Miles, because I think this shows just what a farce the reporting was on COVID-19 as well. Miles, they're claiming that only 161 Chinese citizens are missing or are dead as of yesterday. Do you believe that number in any way, shape, or form?
100%, I don't believe this. It's always a lie. No, is CCP is talking truth. This is not no truth. Impossible. So I have a friend in the Chongqing area. The 9 families, 3 get missed. It cannot find out. Missing. As you see, the last night call me is crying. All the family is scared. 9 families, 3 missing. So that's totally lie. This is the Jackie. Don't believe this. Same the coronavirus. Laboratory in the Wuhan, everything is a lie. Okay, Jackie, thank you.
And you're saying right now the flooding is Chongqing, which is
Chongqing, yeah, we talked about this yesterday. Chongqing looks like it's flooded. In fact, their industrial area, they said last night that it was under 2 meters of water.
Sir,
and Wuhan is going.
I have the inside intelligent people tell me. The last night is New York. It's the night 2 o'clock. The inside have a meeting. They say. Now they totally more than 86,000 people died. That's officially inside intelligence. 86 people died.
86,000. 86,000. Okay, I want to now turn to Wuhan. They have Dr. Giuseppe Tritto. You have many people throughout the world now are coming and saying, "Hey, the path of this virus leads right back to the Wuhan lab, into Batwoman, the scientist." You've said this from the very beginning. What do you say now do you still think there's enough effort by the United States and others to force the issue here of exactly what happened so that CCP can continue to lie and Americans continue to die, Chinese continue to die, Canadians? Do you think enough pressure is being put on the CCP? And tell us about your theory about the Wuhan lab.
Definitely not enough, sir. You look if America #1 in this country, in the power in the country in the world, it no focus to the point. Only 2 points. Laboratory 3 or 4 on the Wuhan is the army control, CCP army. This is why they are day 1 is sent to general from the PLA, biology weapon. General Chen go there, but nobody talk about this. So nobody go to China as a real go to Wuhan. Laboratory P4 check anything. Nobody, even the WHO, it just show off. Nothing to real go to the P4 Wuhan lab. Another side point, very important. Even CCP say the truth. Oh, that's from natural, that's from animal, not the people to people. Doesn't care. Now it's the effect. How many people in the world, more than 20 million getting infected? How many people die? American people is 180,000 people die. But who knows? Next month, next week, how many American people die? Only one. Go to give America authority, all the Western world and UN and the WHO go to China, find out the truth. That's the truth. Maybe from animal, Maybe from, Stephen King Bannon, the hamburger. Maybe from Jackie Home. But we want to know the truth. That's easy. That you must be to action to do. But nobody cares. Only talking and media and the paperwork. Nobody seriously really want to look at the 4 point. Why the PLA general don't give VR information? What is happening to people? Number 2, why don't want the outside people and American go to investigation, find out the truth? Only truth can solve the problem. Only truth can keep everybody free. But now, nobody forget this. Why? Bureaucracy, politician, and behind a lot of reasons. That's the CCP. How big a power influence America, influence the world. That's 3 years ago, I did the DC press conference. I say, everybody West the world, American fans, do you ready? The black time coming in, cover you all the country. Nobody believe me. Now you get people die, and infect coronavirus, and economy, and legal warfare. Months ago in Manhattan, 56 legal case. Who created this? CCP in America created 56 legal cases. Attack months ago. This is called legal warfare. They always use legal warfare to kill the enemy, sir.
Miles, one last question. We got about a minute and a half. Tell us, what action is it going to take to make the CCP open up that P4 lab, in your opinion? You got about a minute.
Sir, you still do not give the CCP money, kill your America. America need to engage economy, everything. Secondly, President America, everybody conquers how we need immediately make the team go to China CCP investigation. Only engage, stop money to give CCP and create investigation team. That's only one way, sir. America people don't need to die tomorrow, next second. Thank you, sir.
Miles, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to having you. You're going to be on the special tomorrow. Get another special about the CCP and what it's doing to the United States. Miles Guo will be joining us, and a cast of others, including Bill Gertz. We've got about a minute left. Miles, thank you very much. We're going to end, actually, with the beautiful montage of the new federal state of China, the support they were there at downtown New York yesterday. Raheem, anything before we jump?
I just want to remind people to tune in at 3 p.m.
Oh, 3 p.m. National Pulse. The show's on fire. We didn't get a chance to play the Nigel Farage stuff, but I want to play that on Monday because I want to talk about voting and owning your vote and everything like that. We got to get on top of voting. Jack Maxey, before we wrap.
Three Gorges Dam, 9 meters from topping over the top. I think everybody needs to pay attention to it. 75,000 cubic meters coming in the backside, only 48 going out the front side, rising about 10 to 20 centimeters per hour.
Wow.
Miles Grove called this 7 weeks ago, said this day was coming, and when that dam goes, it's going to take down with it a big part of the world economy and the medical economy. It's going to affect your life. Okay, see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. live.